Okay, so in the last video, we managed to read in some data into R, and as you can see, the data's still here. Now I'm going to have a think about how I can visualize the data or plot the data. Let's take a look at the data actually. Here you see I've got time series, I've got a date and a price series. So what I'm going to do is first things first, I'm going to coerce the date field in the data set so that R will understand that it's not a string of numbers, but it's actually a date. Make R understand that this is actually a point in time. Now, I need to tell R that I want to do something to this column of the data frame, which is called BAE Systems price data. So if I type in my console, BAE, and you see R gives me suggestions, so I can click. I encourage you to use the suggestions because one typo will give you a whole hour of hell. Now, if I want to reference a column within that or a variable within that data frame, I use the $, and then I pick the name of the variable I want to work on, in this case, date. I make an arrow that tells R that I want what follows the arrow to happen to the item the arrow points toward. Usually your arrows always point to the left. Here I'm going to type as.date, and you see it gives me a suggestion and it capitalizes as appropriate. You see I also get given a set of brackets because the next argument comes in brackets. I now need to tell R what I want to be coerced into the date format. Well, it's actually the same thing I've already referenced. So I want it to take what's already there, coerce it to date and replace it. So if I key enter and run that, nothing visually happens, but you'll have to take my word that it has now coerced itself to date. The reason we use the R package is because it has a lot of packages that can bolt on top. So if I want to make very pretty graphs, I'm going to use a package which is called ggplot2. To do this for the first time, I need to tell R to install the package. So I key install.packages, open my brackets. In speech, type the name of what I want, ggplot2, and I would key enter. I'm not going to press enter because I've already installed this because I've been using R for a few years. If I do, I'll get an error message because I've already loaded it in. So if you get an error message, you've already got it. So I'm just going to cancel and accept the error message. Once I've downloaded it, key library, ggplot2. Alternatively, I can click on the packages tab and just make sure it's ticked in. I've already got it ticked in, so I don't need to run that line of code. Fantastic. And I'll switch the view here because I have my pre-typed clean code at the top. And I would very much encourage you stop the video and scribble it down with a biro if it helps you. So I'm up to this point now, halfway. I've already done the date coercion, which is this line. Now I need to plot. I'm going to give my graph a name. I'm going to call it plot 1. Plot 1 will be made with the following instructions, hence the arrow. The command I need is called ggplot. Type like this. And I'm just going to keep using the assistant. So I've now got a set of brackets. I now need to type the name of the data frame where the variables are stored that I wish to plot. That's BAE systems price data. Now I do comma space. Now I need to tell it what axis should be plotting which variable. AES is the abbreviation for axis. Now I'm going to open another set of brackets. X equals, well, the custom is you put date on the x-axis, so I'm going to stick to that, comma space. Y equals, well, there's only one thing left. Price. I am being careful to get the names right and remember that they're case sensitive. Capital, capital. So I've told it what data I wish to use, what I want to plot and where. I now need to add on an argument to this, which tells R what type of graph I want to plot. Now I'm thinking I'll plot a scatter plot because stock price data isn't evenly spaced. So I think a scatter plot would be more appropriate than a line graph. Now, experience tells me that geom point is the abbreviation for a scatter plot, and you can look this up in the CRAN manuals if necessary. Now, if I were to run that line, which in fact I will run the line, I'll get a new object up here. If I type plot 1 and just key enter, I'll get to see it. Now let me make it nice and big for you. Here I have a time series scatter plot. This seems quite satisfactory to me. I've got time on the bottom, it's evenly spaced. I can see there's a bit of a wave in the graph, general upward trend. I can actually interpret this as it is. Now, the reason I like to use R is because there's oodles of things you can do in R. I would encourage you to really make use of what's on the web. If you just type ggplot2 into Google, you'll get tons of great materials, and you can fiddle around by adding trend lines, changing colors, etc., etc. There's one thing that I do want to do in the video. I'm going to take the same instruction because I can overwrite my previous instructions. I'm going to add one more argument by using the plus rule. And you can see actually I have it up here in my clean code. If I have a date on my x-axis and I've coerced it to as date, which I've already done and you've seen me do, I'm now able to manipulate that x-axis a bit. I don't like the month labels. I would far rather try and have slightly more frequent labels. So I can use the scale x date argument. Sorry, I'm typing in the wrong place, and you'll learn very quickly in R that there's 100 ways to make a little error. Use the scale x date argument, and I want to control the date breaks. So date breaks equals, now in speech, I'm going to type 2 weeks. In fact, I'll show you what happens if I type 1 week. R is actually quite smart. So let me call it again for you and make it max. You see, with a weekly tick on the x-axis, it's very, very cluttered. I can't easily interpret that. So now you see why I would suggest you put a plot of 2 weeks. like that. Let's run it and get it again. Make it nice and big. Voila. That looks perfect. My minor tick lines are a week apart, so I can actually work out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, bit of a gap for Saturday, Sunday, because it's equity, Monday, Tuesday, etc., etc. Now I've got a graph that I actually like. I can copy that and I can paste that into a Word document, or I can just pop it into Paint and save it as an image. I appreciate that's quite a lot in 11 minutes. I think I will paste the sample code to this point into a note file and pop it onto the Moodle pages for you. But I hope this illustrates that R can be quite powerful, but it can also be quite pernickety in terms of the commands you give it. And I'm quite sure, having watched this video, you will never complain about eViews again. I want to remind you at this point that R may be hard work, but it's worth the hard work. I've seen students who have basic competencies in R really sell themselves to employers, and they've been taken in data analytics roles, not for their first class degree, not for all the love of eViews, but for the love of R. That's why we learn this, because it's an industry standard software and you've got to have industry standard skills so you can have a nice graduate salary. With that, I leave you.